afternoon, everyone. My name is Cindy Panuco. I'm the Director of the Consumer Rights and Economic Justice Project here at Public Counsel. And I'd like to welcome you to the first of a series of more webinars being offered to help California's entertainment and other workers learn about and access unemployment benefits and other support under the Federal Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, and through other local resources that we have here available to us in Los Angeles, through legal aid organizations, through some of the best employment law attorneys in the country here in California. I wanted to start off by first letting everyone know that we had initially planned for this to be a Zoom webinar that you could join and ask questions through, but because of the overwhelming response that we received, we didn't want to limit the participants, so we are streaming this live on YouTube. That does mean that we won't be able to take any questions throughout the webinar, but we thank those of you who have submitted hundreds of questions to us in advance of the webinar. We will do our best to answer as many of them. We prepared our presentation trying to address the questions that you all submitted in advance. We're going to answer a few at the end, and we will also be providing a frequently asked questions on our landing page that we've created for this webinar series. So Public Counsel has teamed up with the Legendary Entertainment, a global entertainment studio, to establish this unemployment series we call H.E.L.P, HELP, which is Helping Entertainment and Labor Professionals. The HELP webinar series that you see here that we've just begun is going to be offering free webinars to the entertainment industry community throughout this pandemic and until we are able to ensure that folks who need questions answered about the process have as many questions answered. We want to be able to keep you up to date with the most relevant and immediate information that is coming out through California, through the federal government. We have created the landing page, which is how many of you have accessed and found us. And we want to help persons who are navigating the unemployment process and who have found themselves displaced for the very first time in their lives. And because we find ourselves in these unprecedented times with the highest unemployment rate since the Great Recession, we are hoping that through this program and through the resources that we will be providing you here today and through the website landing page, we will be able to help you navigate these very difficult times. As we know, the employment industry powers the Los Angeles and California economy, not just here locally, but nationally. The International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, the largest union representing below the line workers, estimates that up to 95% of its 150,000 members are out of work due to the pandemic. Additionally, there are countless other non-union production workers affected by the shutdown, including production assistants, vendors, office workers, and in Los Angeles County alone, the entertainment industry is responsible for hundreds of thousands of not just direct jobs in the industry and in production, not to mention we should mention the indirect jobs created in the catering, dry cleaning, all other industries that the entertainment industry helps keep fueled. And it contributes billions to our local economy. And in recognition of this, the $2 trillion economic stimulus bill, known as the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or the CARES Act, which you'll hear about today, was passed. And it included unemployment benefits for the entertainment, freelance, gig workers. Traditionally, these workers, freelancers or gig workers, have not qualified as employees for purposes of unemployment benefits. As you'll learn today, CARES has changed that. What this has meant was that in addition to handling the millions of traditional unemployment applications that are coming in to the state agencies, our agencies are now also having to set up an entirely new application and process for the new expanded benefits that will reach the entertainment industry. The system in questions can be tricky. They were tricky enough to begin with, but especially are going to be tricky for creative professionals and below the line workers in the entertainment industry who have multiple employers, who work on short-term gigs, who work throughout the various states, who may have benefits that they want to know what state to apply in, because in 1 year they may have worked on numerous projects across the country. Those are some of the questions that we hope to answer throughout the, if not today, throughout the series and future webinars that we will be organizing. And then also, just so our viewers and everyone who's tuned in know, today, this first webinar will cover a basic introduction to unemployment benefits, an overview of the expansion of benefits under CARES, the California-specific nuances to unemployment benefits, what city resources are available to persons who find themselves displaced for the first time, what county resources are available to also displaced workers, maybe folks who are operating independent or small businesses who are sole proprietors. And then at the end, we'll give a basic overview of other workers' rights and leave benefits that folks should be aware of that may intersect with their unemployment benefits, or if you find yourself unemployed for the very first time, you may not be aware that you have other employment rights, and those will be covered as well by our labor and employment law expert joining us today. At the end of the webinar, we'll also, as I mentioned, be answering a few of our viewer questions that were sent in beforehand. And because of the short time that we have today, our webinar is scheduled to go till about 2:30. We'll be short on time. We won't get to all of them, but we have combed through them to make sure we answer the most, the questions that kept coming up. And as I mentioned, we will be preparing a written FAQs, a frequently asked questions document that you can visit our website after on the landing page that we've created for this, so that you can see your question responded to in writing. So if you want to make sure to get future alerts about the future webinars, make sure you've signed up on our landing page. It's at publiccouncil.org/help, H-E-L-P, and you'll make sure to get the alerts for all of the future webinars that we'll be hosting, where we will be going into much deeper dives on the nuances of unemployment benefits, much deeper than what we're going today. Today will just be a basic primer for folks who have never been exposed to the unemployment application process, and especially in California. So without further ado, I'd like to give you a bit of background on our first expert that we've gotten to speak with us today. The first panelist you will hear from is Judy Conti. Ms. Conti is a nationally recognized labor and employment law expert and advocate. She became the Director of Government Affairs for the National Employment Law Project after spending 7 years as the co-founder and executive director of the District of Columbia's Employment Justice Center. Judy's presentation will touch on the basics of unemployment benefits and expanded benefits under the CARES Act. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Cindy, and thanks for inviting me to be here. I hope everybody out there is doing okay today. I know we're all working under very difficult circumstances, or not working under very difficult circumstances. So I'm sending out good vibes to everybody in the group. If you could go to my next slide, please. And the next slide after that. All right, to a few key takeaways I want you to remember from the beginning. There are major new programs that will provide unemployment benefits to people who get paid by W-2s and 1099s, including those with irregular work histories. There will, unfortunately, probably still be some people who fall through the cracks of these programs, but they really are designed to provide broad coverage for people, and chances are you will be covered. Federal guidance and state implementation is taking a bit of time, but we hope everything is going to be up and running. I prepared these slides last week, actually, and we were still saying a week or two. We are hearing from states now that it might take a little bit longer, and we'll talk about that towards the end. But we're hoping that things are going to be getting up and running as quickly as possible, but you may have to wait just a little bit. And you do not have to figure this all out for yourself. The state agencies are the ones who are ultimately responsible to figure out what program that you qualify for. It's just your responsibility to apply and get your information in. Next slide, please. Okay. There's a new program that was implemented with the CARES Act called Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. And this covers workers who are not ordinarily eligible for state UI. And basically, people who get paid by a W-2 are usually eligible for state UI as long as they lost their job through no fault of their own. And there are some states that have broader coverage, and because of the definitions of employment in those states, they are also processing regular UI claims for for gig workers and people who are called independent contractors, but really should be considered employees. But if you are not eligible for UI because you are truly self-employed or an independent contractor or a gig worker in a state that doesn't provide UI for gig workers, then as long as you are unemployed for one of the reasons on the next page we'll discuss, you will be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. And this will be 39 weeks of UI benefits, the state UI benefit through the PUA program. It will be retroactive to January 27th, and it runs through the end of the year. So if you lost your work as a result of COVID-19 as far back as January 27th, then you can get retroactive benefits. Obviously, if you didn't lose your work till later than that date, that would be your date of eligibility. The PUA weekly benefit, oh, excuse me, can you go back again, thanks, is the same as the state's UI benefit, but there is a floor. It can't be less than half of the state's average weekly UI benefit, so you won't get too lowballed. And this does not cover people who can telework with pay or who are receiving paid sick or paid leave benefits. And I will say we've heard from a lot of people trying to figure out, well, maybe I'd make more money if I went out on UI instead of paid sick or paid leave. Don't do that. That would be considered voluntarily quitting your job, and then you wouldn't be eligible for PUA or state UI benefits. We want to keep people attached to the workforce as much as possible. So if you can telework with pay or you're getting paid sick or paid leave benefits, you need to get those first. And the good thing about that too is it'll make sure that it keeps all of your tenure up and running with your employer, and any benefits you're receiving, especially health insurance, will stay up and running as well. Next slide, please. These are the covered conditions. If you lost your job or your work for one of these reasons and you're not eligible for UI, then you will be eligible for PUA. You are diagnosed with or seeking diagnosis of COVID-19 or caring for someone with it. And I've had questions about whether diagnosed means you had a positive test. No, you don't have to have a positive test. If a doctor diagnoses you with COVID-19, even in the absence of a test, that is a diagnosis. You are caring for a child or a household member who can't attend school or work. You're quarantined or have been advised to self-quarantine. You can't start or reach a job, or your place of employment is closed as a direct result of COVID-19, or you had to quit your job as a direct result of COVID-19. And I just want to talk about this last one for a second here. I don't think this is so broad that you are concerned about being out and about and your employer is still open, but you don't want to go to work anymore without better circumstances. Just a generalized fear is not going to be enough for you to quit your job, and that can be considered a direct result. But if you are a medically compromised person and your doctor has told you, no, you should not go to work and you can't get paid sick leave or you don't have paid leave, and you had to quit your job then you can probably claim that you had to quit your job as a direct result of COVID-19. Similarly, if you have an employer who is not taking appropriate precautions for your health and safety, and you've tried to remedy it and it's still too dangerous, and it goes against the CDC guidelines, for example, you might have a claim then as well. Whereas there's still a lot developing in this area, so I can't answer that with perfect certainty, but those are the kind of circumstances that we think would mean a direct result of COVID-19. Next slide, please. Other UI programs that have been implemented through CARES are Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, PEUC, and this is simply 13 more weeks of state UI benefits. So if you qualify for state UI, you will get, and you exhaust your benefits. Most states have 26 weeks, some have fewer, 8 states have fewer. But if you exhaust all your state UI benefits, you will have 13 more weeks available to you through the end of 2020. And the final new program is Pandemic Unemployment Compensation. This is a $600 increase in weekly benefits for everybody who is on state UI and PUA. It will go through the week ending July 26th, unless otherwise extended, and it begins the last week of March. And this is for anybody who's getting even so little as $1 of PUA or UI benefits. It is a flat rate. It is designed to try to make workers whole for the wages that they're losing, because UI only replaces about 40% of your wages on average across the country. And it is a flat rate because that's all the states could handle administering. They aren't able to vary rates depending on how much you've made or how unemployed you are, if you're still working part-time or not. It was just administratively impossible to do anything other than a flat rate. Next slide, please. Here is how we think and hope the application process will play out. Though we're starting to get more and more detail about what states are doing, and each state does have some flexibility to administer the process as they want. But typically, whether you're seeking UI or PUA, states will probably first require that you apply for UI and provide information on your work history and the reason for leaving work. For people, I've seen a common question for people that have both W-2 income and 1099 income, which one will count, if you will? Like if you've got more 1099 income, can you just opt for PUA? And unfortunately, the answer is no. If you are eligible for UI, you will get UI, even if it's at a lower benefit level, because that is something the states pay ordinarily, and that is what they've decided to sequence first. So if you are at all eligible for UI, you will get that, and the state will start paying benefits, and that will move the most quickly. That will move faster than PUA, and you will get the $600 as well. If you are found ineligible for UI, we are urging states, and the Department of Labor is recommending, that there's an automatic consideration of your eligibility for PUA. We don't want them to have to do an additional application. I think that is the way it is going to be in California. We've been hearing that some states, however, may require an additional application. We're going to be working with the Department of Labor in those states to try to eliminate that. If you don't have wages reported in the system, then you'll probably have to provide your own proof of employment and earnings, such as prior year tax returns, pay stubs, or affidavits if necessary. And then the state will make a determination of PUA eligibility and start paying benefits if you're eligible. Next slide, please. The final thing is, I will just answer a couple of questions that we're getting frequently. What about undocumented workers? Unfortunately, they are not covered under any of these programs, and we've tried, but we're unable to get that in the CARES Act. Generally speaking, UI is only available for people who are work authorized, and for the PUA program, there is a definition of qualified alien that's in very complex regulations. I can't go into it here, but there is a fact sheet up on our website that talks about it. We are www.NELP.org, and there is an entire page devoted to resources for workers in the coronavirus crisis. And there's about a 3-page document that goes into details about immigrants' rights in terms of UI. Are workers eligible for PUA if they didn't earn enough to qualify for UI or they're independent contractors? Yes. Everyone gets PUC through the end of, anybody who's eligible through the end of March up through the end of July. And generally speaking, it takes states 2 to 3 weeks to process regular UI applications, and we hope that won't change too much right now. But it is going to take states longer to get their PUA applications and their processes up and running and to reprogram their computers. Many states are running on IT infrastructure that is 40+ years old, and they are literally calling computer programmers out of retirement who know the computer program language COBOL, because that's what they have to program their computers in. And it's going to be taking some of the states at least another 2 or 3 weeks to get up and running, if not longer. We're going to be working in the next package in Congress to try to get all of the states' IT money so they can upgrade their systems before we get to the next crisis. But unfortunately, in this one, they're not able to be as nimble as we would like. We recommend that if folks know there is no chance they are eligible for state UI, check your state websites frequently, and when they say they are accepting PUA applications, apply then. But if you are at all eligible for UI or you think you might be, apply now and make sure you get those in. Next slide. And that's what I have to say. Again, here is our website, and there is a lot of information on there for workers about UI, workplace safety, and other rights that you have right now, including paid sick and paid leave. So I hope you'll visit that. And thank you very much for your time today.
Great, thank you, Judy. Our next speaker is Jill Thompson. Jill is an employment law attorney with an expertise in California's workers' rights laws. And she's one of the most, California happens to be one of the most friendly workers' rights states in the country. She's the director of Public Counsel's Women and Girls' Rights Project here. And she will focus today on giving us a primer on unemployment benefits and the application process in California. And Jill will also share what free legal aid resources are available to folks who find themselves for the first time trying to navigate the unemployment benefit system and the resources that are available to them. Thank you, Jill. Jill, I just took you off mute.
Okay, see me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much, Cindy and Judy. Yeah, I'm just going to go through a few basics on the California unemployment system in case some of you are not familiar with how it works. I know that Judy did cover some of this, so I'll try to skip over a few things so we don't repeat too much. The unemployment system in California is basically a system for partial wage replacement. It's not meant to pay all the wages that you've lost. It goes to a maximum of $450 per week. And that's all based on how much income that you were making before. And it's for folks that are unemployed or even partially unemployed through no fault of their own. And by that, by no fault, they mean people who have not been fired because of misconduct or haven't voluntarily quitted for, without a good cause. So in terms of eligibility, normally UI is only available to regular W-2 employees, to workers. And also in California, as many of you are aware, especially under AB 5, there's a lot of heightened awareness that many people who have been typically designated as independent contractors or in fact should have been classified as employees and therefore eligible for UI. So in California, we are encouraging people that have income that could have been misclassified to go ahead and include that in their applications. To get UI, you do have to be legal to work. So that means you have a work permit or your authorization to work is implicit in your status. So if you're a citizen, if you're a legal permanent resident, if you have DACA, TPS, those kinds of things, you are eligible to get unemployment. And you do have to be able to work and actively looking for work, although that means a little bit different things in this current climate. The one thing that you should know is that in order to be eligible for unemployment insurance, you do have to have a sufficient number of wages in at least one quarter. So during a 3-month period, you have to have at least earned $1,300 in W-2 wages to qualify. There is an alternative way they can determine that as well, and that's $900 in a quarter period. Plus, it's like 1.25 times the income in your highest quarter. So it's a little bit complicated, but basically, if you made more than $1,300 in a quarter during 2019, you will be eligible for regular unemployment insurance. as Judy said, the other thing to remember is that for unemployment insurance, the benefits run from the time that you file. So it really is important to file as soon as possible. Even if it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks for them to figure out exactly what they're going to pay and to get that money going, it will be retroactive. So make sure that you file ASAP. I also wanted to mention that for any workers who are concerned about how this might impact them if they're immigrants, unemployment insurance is not considered a public benefit in terms of the public charge rules, even as they've been expanded now. So that's not something that you need to worry about. And I just wanted to show you here in this bottom right-hand corner, this is how the California system decides what your base earnings are. So for example, if you've already applied for unemployment insurance in March, you look down there, then your base period is going to be October 2018 through September 2019. So you will have had to meet the threshold requirement in at least one of those quarters to be eligible. If you haven't applied yet and you're applying now in April, then your base period is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be January 2019 through December 19th. So that's where you need to make sure that you have all of your information available before you apply, and also to help you determine whether or not you're going to be eligible. Okay, next one. Okay, a couple of things about the special provisions for UI eligibility in California. Judy already mentioned that, but in terms of CARES, there's expanded eligibility and an extended time frame. There's also the extra $600 in, they're calling it PAC in California. I'm not sure what that stands for, but it's PUC or PAC in California. But there's also two important things that are California specific. One is that in an executive order, the governor waived the normal 1 week period, the waiting period for unemployment insurance. And that means that you don't have to wait a week before your benefits kick in. Your benefits will kick in the first day of the first period that you are unemployed and file a claim. Secondly, they've relaxed the actively looking for work requirement. So I think a lot of people are concerned, the whole industry is shut down. How am I going to look for work during this period? The truth is, you don't really need to worry too much about that right now. You can be very honest when you're certifying for benefits and say, I haven't been actively looking. There's no jobs, and you're not going to be penalized for that as long as you are otherwise eligible. The next thing is that you do not have to enroll in Cal Jobs to be eligible for unemployment insurance right now. Cal Jobs is a system which helps you look for work, but that's going to be waived right now in California due to the COVID situation. Next one. Okay, a couple of things. I think Judy covered a lot of this. I just want to reemphasize that the PUA, which is the extended UI benefits for folks that are gig workers or 1099 workers, that's only going to be available for those folks that are not eligible for regular unemployment insurance. Okay, so if you had any W-2 earnings, chances are you're not going to be able to get that PUA. To get the PUA, though, you do have to meet some basic eligibility. As Judy said, you need to be unemployed or unable to work because of COVID-19. You do have to be legal to work, authorized to work. You have to be available to work, meaning that if things change, you're ready to go back to work and you're not disabled or for whatever reason not able to go to work. And then you will still have to provide information about your 1099 earnings over the last 18 months in order to establish your rate. Next. Okay, yeah, a couple of things. I've been checking the EDD website every day, and they are still working out the details on the PUA system. Some interesting things there is once that is up and running, the benefits will be retroactive to February 2nd. So depending on when exactly your date the date was that you were impacted by the COVID, then that will kick in. So even if it's April 15th or April 30th before that PUA system is up and running, when you finally do start getting benefits, it will go back to when you were actually impacted by the COVID crisis. I want to repeat Judy's advice on this. If you are a business, a sole proprietorship, or a genuine self-employed contractor, or all of your 1099 work has been from out of state, I would suggest that you wait until they give us better instructions about what the PUA system is going to look like so that you don't waste your time. But for everybody else, please go ahead and complete the regular UI application and include all of your earnings during the base period, your 1099 and your W-2, because that's going to be really important that you get started with that. And you're going to need to be prepared to provide additional documentation to support any 1099 earnings, because the unemployment system will not have that in their records. So you're going to be able to provide, some kind of documentation to show that you were working during those times. I also mentioned that if you think you were misclassified as an independent contractor anytime during the last 3 years, I would encourage you to seek legal advice about that, because you could be eligible for other kinds of workers' rights, like wages, overtime that wasn't paid, etc. But don't wait for that before you file for your UI. Go ahead and file for UI, let them figure it out, and then seek legal representation, or legal advice rather, to find out how to deal with those misclassified wages. Okay, a little bit on just how to get going on this if you're not familiar. The EDD is encouraging everybody to use their online system. So that's definitely going to be the fastest system, and they are updating it all the time to reflect, new questions or new information that's relevant to the current situation. So please use the online. So the first thing you want to do is you want to go to the EDD website. And I've got the link right here, or you can Google in EDD unemployment insurance or unemployment online, and you'll go right to it. And then the first step is you need to register on the benefits program online, or the BPO. If you've done that in the past and you've been getting unemployment insurance, you don't need to do it again. But if you've never applied for unemployment insurance before, or it was many years ago, that's going to be the first step, and I'll show you in a minute what that looks like. Next, make sure you have all the information that you need to file a claim. And then once you get the BPO, actually, Cindy, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, okay, so this is what the website looks like. And if you see down there, there's a little blue square that says Benefits Program Online, log in or register. So if you have not registered before, you're going to want to register first. So you're going to click on that line. It'll bring up another screen, and you're going to put in your email address. You're going to create a password, and you're going to pick some, you know what you call them? They're like little objects that you pick so that you recognize. So maybe it's like a flower or a canoe or a tree. So you pick that object, and that's going to be to make sure that you can identify that account as being your account. Okay. And then once you do that, you go ahead and register. They will send you an email, and you're going to go into that email. You're going to click on it, and that will activate your BPO online account. Okay, so that's the first thing that you need to do, and that's really important. Okay, Cindy, if you could go back to the previous one. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so once you are registered for the online, you go back to that same screen, and you click UI online, and that's where you're going to be able to either reopen a claim. Let's say you were on unemployment for a few months, but you didn't exhaust your benefits, and now you're unemployed again. You're going to reopen your claim, or you're going to start a new claim, and that's going to give you the application for unemployment insurance. Now, I did want to give you, I did want to tell you that as you're going through the unemployment insurance application. They do have a nice feature which allows you to save it as you go, and I encourage you to use that, because if the system crashes or if you make a mistake and you pushed your back arrow key, you're going to get kicked out of the system and lose everything. So make sure that you use that save as draft feature as you go through that process. Once you've completed your online application, you're going to receive a packet in the mail from the EDD. That's going to tell you basically what records they have and what they're basing your eligibility and your benefits amount on. You will have a chance at that point to make corrections or to add information on your earnings. And so you definitely want to take advantage of that, or to clarify anything that you're not sure about with the EDD. Also, if after doing that you disagree still with what they've come up with, you can file an appeal. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like later. You should start getting your benefits within about 2 to 3 weeks. And then you're going to have to certify for your benefits every single 2 weeks. So you can use the UI online for that, or you can use a UI mobile app on your phone or on a tablet. That's also really handy. And I wanted to just point to you, there's a link here at the bottom. I don't know if you can see it, but it's called Reporting in Entertainment Industry Earnings. And it's a video that the EDD has prepared specifically for entertainment industry workers. It's very helpful in terms of explaining what some of the terms are and how you should report things like residual earnings, for example, versus other kinds of earnings. So you might want to take a look at that when you're ready to start certifying. Next. One more. Yeah, here I just wanted to show you, a lot of people have asked, how did they go about determining how much of the benefit that you get? And what you can do before you even apply, if you want to find out approximately what you're going to be able to get in terms of regular unemployment benefits, you'll pull up this screen. And in each of those different months, you're going to put in your total earnings for that month. And as I said, I would include 1099 earnings if there's any chance that you were misclassified. So go ahead and you put the earnings in for each of those different months. So you can see in this one, I have different earnings for some months. There's months where I don't have any earnings at all. Others I've got, quite a bit. And then they automatically calculate that for you. And in this example, the highest quarter earnings that I had was $6,985. So I'm definitely eligible for unemployment insurance. I exceed the $1,300 threshold. And then it estimates what my weekly benefits will be. So based on that, it would be $269 per month. So again, if you've made a lot of earnings, it's going to be higher. If you've made fewer earnings, it's going to be lower, but everybody's going to get something as long as you have more than $1,300, and then you'll get that $600 on top of it. So this is a really useful tool for figuring out whether or not you're going to be eligible for based on your W-2 income. Okay, tips for filing a claim. Again, if you have any W-2 earnings, file right away, because the benefits are going to run from the date that you file the claim. Those are not going to be retroactive to when you lost your job. Now, for gig workers, having all the information available before you start may be a little onerous and intimidating for you, but yes, you should get everything. You should write down every gig, every part-time, every temp job that you've had in the last 18 months and include that to maximize the amount of your claim. Use the save as draft feature and don't use your backspace key, because you'll definitely get kicked out and have to start all over again. One thing that's really important is that I think many people realize that the current forms and applications are not very conducive to the entertainment industry. And there's a lot of ways in which you'll find, well, that I can't really answer yes or no, that doesn't quite fit my situation. Well, I think our best advice there is just, if you're not sure, choose the one that's the closest, and then you will have a chance to clarify that later if need be. So don't let your confusion keep you from filing for those claims. Just select the one that seems the best. I have been told by the EDD that they have added to the reason why you're separated from your employment a drop-down menu that says COVID-19. So you want to make sure that you do that if that's the reason why you've lost your job or you've lost work or you're not able to work at this time. And then the EDD is also saying, please do not say that you're out of work due to a disaster or a lockout. Those apply to really different situations. So that's not what they want you to be using during this COVID-19 situation, and that might just complicate your application. So don't use that, but do say COVID-19 under your separation reason. A couple of tips for creative industry workers. A lot of people say, well, you know, who do I write down as my employer? I think what's really important to just understand is you want to look at who paid you for whatever gig that was. So don't say, okay, I worked on Game of Thrones, or I worked for CBS production company. You want to look on your actual pay stub or your check stub or on your 1099 form and see who actually paid you. It might be a payroll company, it might be a talent agency. So that's who you're going to write down as your employer. Now, when you're ready to file for the PUA, if you're a genuine independent contractor or self-employed person, then the EDD says you're the employer and you should use your own name and business address for that. And I'll ask Judy if she has any different information, but that's what I'm hearing from the EDD. Once you get around to certifying for your income, sometimes people ask, well, how do I count for residuals? Or what if I'm a gig employee and, you know, I get paid maybe 2 months down the road for work that I performed back in February? How do I treat that? Well, the general rule from the EDD is that they'll ask you about earned income. Earned income is actual work that you've performed, and it only counts on the date that you earned it, regardless of when you're paid. And you can include tips in that. So let's say, for example, you've got different industry gigs and you're also working as a waiter and you get tips for that. You can include all of that as your earned income. But you want to actually report it for the days that you actually worked and not when you get that pay. The opposite is true for other kinds of income. So residuals, royalties, holding fees, those count when you actually receive them. So when you're certifying for your income, you're going to want to include any residuals that come in based on the time period when you actually receive those and not when you did the work. I hope that makes sense. It can be a little confusing. And again, I encourage you to look at that video that's the EDD website that specifically talks about certifying benefits if you're an entertainment industry worker. Next one. Okay, now here's some of the information and resources that are available. We are going to have a public counsel resource page on this landing page where we will be posting frequently asked questions and those answers, as well as giving you links to other information that could be really useful during this time. So for example, if you're not sure if you've been misclassified, we'll have information there that basically explains to you how that's determined in California, and that can help you assess which kind of benefits you might want to apply for. I'd also encourage you to look at the EDD website. There's actually a lot of really helpful information on there, and they have relevant online videos that they have on YouTube. So you can also search for those, and I found those very helpful. Now, in terms of if you have really specific questions or a complicated situation, maybe you have a disability and you're just not comfortable, trying to go online and figuring this out on your own. There are a number of organizations that are providing one-on-one type assistance for filling out these applications, for reviewing the information that you get and helping you to appeal. One of those is the workforce centers, and I'll let our friends from the city talk more about that. The second is Legal Aid at Work is a statewide organization that provides information for workers. They have a hotline number, which the number is right there on the screen, and I'll also post it for you. So Legal Aid at Work will answer questions for you and can help you with any specific issues that are coming up as you do your online application. The same is BetSetic. They have employment rights clinics. They used to have them once a week. They're now currently having them 3 times a week because of the increase in demand. Because of COVID, they're all virtual clinics, so you do need to make an appointment. So the number that is there, they're doing them in the evenings from 5 to 7, 3 times a week. And what they will do is link you with an attorney or a law student who will actually answer specific questions and walk you through those, whatever questions that you have on an individual basis. We also understand that there are other organizations in the area that are providing similar types of services, and we'll make sure that we post those on your resource page. And then finally, I wanted to make sure that folks are aware that their unions, organizations like the Actors Fund, they have a number of resources available to you, especially if you haven't gotten your unemployment insurance yet and you're really desperate for funds. There's some financial assistance or relief funds that are available, and I'd encourage you to reach out to them. And then finally, as Judy said, for immigrant workers, if you have concerns about that, please go to that website that Judy mentioned on the H.E.L.P website, and that will help you explain to you those issues in more detail. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jill. Before we move on to our next presenter, I wanted to get into some questions and just remind the viewers who are tuning in to our YouTube channel that we moved our Zoom webinar presentation from a closed Zoom session into an open YouTube format to provide accessibility to as many people as possible, given the overwhelming response that we got for folks who were interested in tuning into the webinar. But what that has meant is that we can't answer, we see, but we can't answer the several questions that are coming in through the YouTube channel, and are doing our best to try to address those here in the presentations, given our limited time. And we'll also try to collect those and provide answers to them in frequently asked questions in writing on our landing page. But we do have two that maybe have general applicability to a lot of people that we want to talk to Jill or Judy about before Judy has to leave us. One question, Judy, we got from a viewer is, I applied for unemployment insurance 2 weeks ago and was issued a benefit amount based on the $5,000 of W-2 I had done and not the $80,000 of 1099 work. How do I change it? Can I apply for PUA instead?
Unfortunately, you're going to be stuck with that benefit amount because, as I said earlier, if you are eligible for any UI at all, you're going to get that instead of PUA. One of the preconditions for getting PUA is that you are not qualified for unemployment insurance in the first place. But remember, you're also going to get that extra $600 a week through the end of July. So that'll help bridge the gap of some of the income as well. I wish I had a different answer for you, but it's a system that's not set up for you to pick what maximizes the best benefit for you. It's a system that's set up for you to get UI if you can take it, but if not, then to put you into PUA.
Okay. And then one more question for Judy before we move into our next speaker. If I'm applying in California, do I report earnings from other states? What if other state income is 1099 and not W-2? Yeah. Does it matter where my last employer was located?
If you're applying in California, they will ask for you to report all of your wages, all of your W-2 wages from any other state. And California will probably ask, you should report your 1099 income as well, because California actually has one of the best definitions of what it means to be employed. The AB5 law that you've probably heard people talk so much about. So California is very actively processing claims for UI for people who are gig workers, in fact. So report all of your income. They will determine what is eligible in your benefits determination, and they will work with the other states where you have earned income as well to basically transfer that income into the California system so you can collect fully on it. So I am going to have to jump off in about 2 or 3 more minutes. Cindy, if there's another question for me, I'd love to answer it. I apologize that I can't stay on for the rest of this and hear the other speakers as well, but I really appreciate you inviting me to be part of this today.
We appreciate you. Thank you so much, Judy.
You're welcome.
Okay. Moving on to our next speaker, Jill mentioned in her presentation some of the other resources that we wanted to make sure folks are aware of that are being provided by our city, by local government, by leaders here in our city. We're fortunate to live in a place with very engaged elected officials and civil servants who are at the ready, making sure that the resources and the needs of the resources are being provided to meet the needs of our community. And from the city, we've brought for you all today Robert Sines, who's the Assistant General Manager for the Workforce Development Department of the City of Los Angeles's Economic and Workforce Development Department. Robert has been working at the city, making sure that our WorkSource centers remain staffed and available to persons who find themselves unemployed for the very first time and trying to navigate what they can do to get assistance with their unemployment applications and revamp their resumes, keep their skills fresh. So I'll let Robert share what those resources are. Thank you, Robert.
So thank you, Cindy, for inviting me here today. And on behalf of the mayor, city council, and our departments, the city in and of itself really wants to be able to provide the services and resources to all of you that are impacted by the community and the COVID-19. The resources that we have within the department are not only just for employers, but also for those that are small businesses. So if you, on the next slide, is a list from our website that has all of the various programs within the city. And it's a mix of both small business microloan programs, other small business resources that we have within the city, and then folks around the job losses. The two previous speakers did a wonderful job of detailing of how to get the UI insurance and that process, and they were actually really spot on how to be able to do it. Within the city, we operate what's called WorkSource Centers system. We have 19 centers that assist on a regular and ongoing basis individuals impacted by job losses and folks that have other barriers. I have to say, I've been doing this for about 20 years, have never seen anything like what we're experiencing today. So I do know that many of you out there are feeling that this is happening to you individually, but in terms of what's happening and the devastation to our economy, it's happening collectively. But with that, it happening collectively, we'll be able to work together to provide larger resources for everyone. On our job loss program on the website, it would actually have our list of our WorkSource centers. So if we go to the next page, and this is the list, and not a very fancy list of our WorkSource centers, but in the city of Los Angeles, there are 16 WorkSource centers, and we've made a very conscious decision to keep each and every one of the centers open. They're doing most of the assistance virtually, so by telephone, by email, but we also have limited appointments at each of the centers. So I do encourage you to find your WorkSource center in your geographical area. All 16 are open to anybody. So if you have a particular affinity with a particular center, please call them. So there's no geographical restrictions. What we want to make sure is that everybody that has questions are able to get answers. And I'm sure you could appreciate how impacted all of the centers are. So there might be some delay in folks getting back to you, but we're committed to providing those answers. One big point of clarification is that we're not EDD. So we're not Employment Development Department state staff. Most of our centers are operated by community-based organizations, And we have a couple of centers that do have EDD staff co-located there. But right now, because of the crisis and the emphasis on the unemployment insurance, most of those folks have been deployed specifically on the unemployment insurance side of the house. But our folks are very familiar with the applications. We're also learning ourselves and taking advantage of the great experts that were presented today of what the CARES Act is. So we are also learning and will be transmitting that information to our staff in the 16 centers. So I do want to make sure that everyone takes advantage of the resource that is at the centers. Each of the centers also have other resources in addition to UI, some local programs. Some are providing and connected to other resources, food assistance, and the big piece is really about job referrals. As you know, that the economy here in terms of entertainment and the high concentration we have in entertainment, it really has blocked a number of what was be traditional outlets for resources. When one part of the economy is not working, usually some other part picks up. You know, right now, all of those have been impacted. But the LA Times this weekend did a very good article on parts of the entertainment industry that are still hiring. And in there, they said to look towards folks that are on the technology side of the house and the streaming side of the house. So there was a very good list, which I'll provide to Public Council if they don't have it already, of other resources, and we'll post it on our website as well. The Mayor's Job Portal, which is also on our website, and it's lajobsportal.org. And the Mayor's Job Portal also is identifying industries and businesses that are currently hiring, and a list of other resources. So we're trying to make it as convenient as possible and have various avenues to be able to see those resources. So we do highly encourage you to check out the lajobsportal.org as also a one-stop center, both for job referrals and for resources. The last thing that I would mention is really about training. And this is also an excellent time for folks to be connected to training programs and skill building. So on the jobs portal itself, there is various skill building programs and free resources around credentials that you can take advantage during this time as well. The last two slides that I had was our WorkSource Centers, and there you go. For those of you that have young adults in your household, or if you're currently a young adult, 16 to 24, our youth centers are very specific to you and have also connections back to the educational community, as well as additional resources for folks in this age range. And our last slide is our day labor sites, which just want to add to let you know that that is another available resource that we have through the city, probably not applicable to folks here today. So on behalf of the city, we're happy to present these resources to you all, and we'll get through this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Really appreciate you and the mayor's office for making sure that the city was represented on this webinar to get the word out about what resources are available to Angelenos. And just as we have an extremely dedicated and committed and very sympathetic mayor, we also have county officials and county civil servants who are also working tirelessly to make sure that the word is getting out about resources that are available to displaced workers and small businesses. And from the county, we have a representative who's going to speak with us, Caroline Tarosis. She's a government affairs attorney who works for the County of Los Angeles to enact policy and execute programs that promote economic mobility and community development throughout the County of Los Angeles. She currently serves as a Director of Economic and Business Development for the county's Workforce Development Department, working to promote career pathways in family sustaining wages for populations with barriers to employment. So I'd like to thank Caroline for joining us today, and go ahead and let her take it away.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you to everyone at Public Council for putting this on. I think that this is much needed, and I think it's great, the assembly of experts that you've put together. So hi, everyone. My name is Carolyn Terosis. I oversee economic and business development here at LA County for our workforce department. And just like all of you, I would say that about a month or so ago, our lives and our daily job duties changed very dramatically. I think that as Robert eloquently put it, this is an unprecedented economic emergency. And so we are here for you, for all of our both businesses and workers who really need this assistance. And we're kind of working around the clock to make sure that we're getting all of you the answers and the assistance that you need. If you could just go a couple of slides, next slide, and then next slide, Cindy. Yeah, there we go. So in case, it sounds like most of our audience here is from LA County, and obviously we're working to the film, entertainment, digital media industry. But for those of you who don't know, I work for our LA County Board of Supervisors that oversees 10 million people in the County of Los Angeles. We have our 88 cities, and we also have, to what we know, at least 245,000 businesses that we are working to serve, many of whom have been drastically impacted. We've been giving counseling, technical assistance to our business community. You can follow us at LAC BizDev for those special tips, and then our general social media, LA County Workforce Development, Aging and Community Services, just to get all the up-to-date information. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. So in terms of resources for our business community as well as for our workers, first I'll talk a little bit about our businesses, if we have any businesses on the line. We've been fortunate to be able to have a strong partnership with our Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, and they have actually stood up a strike team to address the COVID-19 response to the pandemic, specifically for businesses. We've counseled over 600 individual businesses since this crisis started, and we are available at any time, day or night, to help through our business layoff aversion services. And you can email COVID-19 response@laedc.org if you'd like to talk with them directly, or if you'd like to talk with our team and see if potentially the layoff aversion services are something that you need. You can email us at bizdev@wedax.lacounty.gov. We're happy to walk you through depending on what your specific needs are. Our skilled, trained professionals at LAEDC keep everything confidential. It's free of charge, and we walk through your business needs and come up with a business plan depending on all the different types of funding and resources that are available. Additionally, I'm not sure if it's been touched on yet, but our Board of Supervisors, as well as I know the mayor of the city of Los Angeles and many other smaller cities throughout the county, put in place an eviction moratorium. That's both for businesses and for individuals, tenants, residential tenants. So that eviction moratorium is in place for both our businesses and our tenants until at least the end of May, with a 6-month repayment period, and we're looking at extending that repayment period longer. These things continue to evolve, but we are here to answer any questions. If you have questions about potentially paying your rent or how you would go about talking to your landlord about not paying rent, I'll get to that slide in a minute. We can give you a number to call. Additionally, if you're looking for specific workforce and business development services, you can go directly to our website, workforce.lacounty.gov. And like Robert mentioned, we also operate over 20 of these America's Job Centers of California. And we have created a virtual resource room online. We are still keeping our job centers open by appointment only, but we do have our resources available online and can help walk you through the process to apply for different types of assistance. And again, we are not EDD, but we are co-located with the Employment Development Department, and we've had several webinars with them, so happy to answer any EDD specific questions as well. And then finally, we are walking individuals through applying for both the Paycheck Protection Program loans as well as the disaster loan assistance through the Small Business Administration. And then just today, if you are a small business, we just launched a business recovery loan product through our Los Angeles County Development Authority that is on the tails of our own county employer assistance program that launched last week. And within the first day of applications being available, not only did we meet our quota, but we now have over 6,000 businesses on our waiting list for loans, for grants through our department. So that money was made available through a generous grant from the Employment Development Department. So again, we do work very closely with them. Next slide, please. In terms of workers, so we have a one-stop shop that was launched on March 26th under the oversight of the Board of Supervisors. This is our kind of command center. It's our LA County Business and Worker Disaster Help Center. You will see that we have resources for businesses and for workers, and we are adding tenant protections to this line as well. So that phone number you will see on your screen is 833-238-4450. There's a plethora of information, whether it be applying for the different types of unemployment insurance, whether it be about different loan programs, or if you just generally speaking have questions or want to report. For example, we've had many reports of non-essential businesses being open, etc. We can walk you through anything that you might need there. We also have specialists from our foreclosure prevention program working with businesses who are concerned about the possibility of foreclosure and wanting to work something out with their bank. Those specialists are coming onto the help center as well. So really, again, that is your central resource for any questions that you might have. We're answering calls in a variety of languages, and we have teamed up with our Office of Immigrant Affairs to ensure that we're able to offer information to our immigrant community as well. Again, I know this is a difficult time, particularly for those individuals in the county who are undocumented. We are aware that a lot of these resources are not available to the undocumented community, and we are trying to make more resources available through our community partnerships and through the Disaster Help Center. If you'd like to email us, you can, disasterhelpcenter@lacounty.gov. Next slide, please. Additionally, if you are an employer who needs to lay off a large percentage of your workforce, as many of our employers have, we have rapid response services for our employers. Not only are we helping the employers themselves, but we are helping the workers who have been dislocated find additional jobs. And just as Robert outlined that the city is posting jobs on their portal, we are also posting jobs. And I know that the governor put forward onwardca.org, I believe it was last week, for a variety of job opportunities for those who are still looking to be placed in new employment after you've been laid off. Next slide, please. And like I mentioned, we partner closely with our Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation. They are working with us daily, and that specific email address to touch base with them directly is covid19response@laedc.org. Next slide, please. In terms of the worker benefits that we can walk you through both the Disaster Help Center or through our virtual resource room at workforce.lacounty.gov. We can walk you through any of those different types of unemployment insurance, disability insurance, paid family leave that you might be amenable to. We are also looking at, we are currently drafting an additional paid family leave ordinance for the County of Los Angeles to go hand in hand with additional paid family leave put forward by the federal government. And if you have any questions about any of these items, you can give us a call. We're absolutely happy to answer them or respond to them via email. And please do note that if you've been temporarily unemployed due to COVID-19 and you do expect to return to work within the next few weeks, you are not required to seek work each week as is typically required under unemployment insurance. So I'm not sure there could be some individuals from our entertainment industry who are expecting to go back to work, just sharing that piece of information with you. We do know, however, that it is taking, anecdotally from our friends at EDD, between 3 to 6 weeks to see any of the unemployment benefits coming down from the state. And obviously this past weekend, the additional $600 unemployment insurance benefit kicked in. That was only for individuals who have already been receiving unemployment insurance. There is still that approximately 3 to 6 week waiting period. So we are available with supportive services dollars at our America's Job Centers. We are actively seeking additional funding to make sure that if you need something like, transportation assistance, food assistance, et cetera, that we can help provide that to you through our network of America's Job Centers. Next slide, please. Also, I'm not sure if anyone went over the CARES Act, but I did want to just give a very brief overview of the CARES Act, if that would be helpful. We know that there's additional, that this is going to be administered by the DOL, but that this is giving us, again, like I mentioned, the emergency paid sick leave and the emergency family and medical leave expansion for those of you who still are employed. And we know that there's additional leaves that are covered under both the FFCRA as well as additional assistance for our business partners under the Paycheck Protection Program. Now under the FFCRA, we are able to cover someone's leave. For example, if a child's school or daycare is closed to COVID-19, if you're at home caring for an individual who is in quarantine, or if you're under your own self-quarantine, or if you are experiencing any symptoms related to COVID-19 and you yourself are seeking medical attention, we know that you would now be entitled to 2 weeks up to 80 hours of paid sick leave at your regular rate of pay if you're unable to work because of quarantine, and then 2/3 of paid sick leave at your regular, 2 weeks of paid sick leave at 2/3 of your regular rate of pay if you're unable to work while you are caring for someone who's been quarantined, or if you are caring for a child whose school or child care provider is closed for reasons due to COVID-19, which I think is many of us. I know that myself, on my team, we have many, many staff members who are having to care for their children while working at home. And I know that it's very difficult for a lot of members of our community. So hopefully some additional relief there. And then on the business assistance side, we are working very closely with our partners at the Small Business Administration and the Small Business Development Centers to provide technical assistance for those who are applying for both the PPP and the disaster loan program. I think, I'm not sure if it was already mentioned on this call, but we do know that people are experiencing significant difficulties when it comes to working with their financial institutions to be backed for these loans, specifically the PPP loans. Please expect the County of Los Angeles to roll out a small business relief program with a loan product within the next week for those of you who are seeking some relief at the PPP level, because we do recognize and we know that a lot of businesses who are historically disenfranchised are continuing to be disenfranchised by being rejected for those loans. And so we are working very feverishly with our community development financial institution partners to try to give some technical assistance and ensure that people are able to qualify for those loans. So please expect that announcement coming. I can tell you that our Board of Supervisors, every member is extremely concerned about this and working at a very fast clip to try to offer some relief. Additionally, we at the county are working to stand up a small employer assistance grant fund because we do know, like I mentioned, that there is this long waiting period for individuals who have applied for immediate relief. And if many of our individuals in California are living paycheck to paycheck, we need to be able to provide relief, much more quickly. So expect that to be rolling out. Next slide, I believe I might have covered that already. Yes, I effectively covered most of this, but of course I'm able to answer any questions if we have any. And with that being said, I just again want to thank all of our partners. I think the one positive thing that has come out of this, as all of us are working at home and working remotely, we're really working as a team of private sector, public sector, working together to try to expeditiously come up with solutions and strategize, because we know that everyone's suffering, and we are here to help in any way that we can. Again, our email address is bizdev, bizdev @wedocs.lacounty.gov. I get every one of those emails. I'll see it myself, and I'm absolutely happy to give my contact information to anyone who wants it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the county's presence on this webinar. And our last speaker, panelist presenter, will be David Rosenfeld. He is a partner shareholder at Weinberg, Roger, and Rosenfeld. He is a very seasoned labor and employment law expert who will provide us with a brief Know Your Rights discussion for folks who may be finding themselves unemployed for the first time. The chances are that you may not also be aware of other rights that you have as a worker, or you might be curious about how those rights that were briefly mentioned by Carolyn also intersect with unemployment benefits. So with that, I will let David take it away.
So let me begin by explaining why this is such a mess. It's difficult, why each of you needs to persevere. Go back and look at the history of the unemployment insurance program. There was no state or unemployment insurance program in 1935 when the Congress enacted the Social Security Act of 1935, which included Social Security, which is not affected hopefully by this crisis, and taxed employers about 6% of their payroll. It told the states that if you enacted or adopted your own unemployment program, the federal government would return that money subject to some minimal qualifications. So lickety-split, within 2 to 3 years, every state adopted or enacted a state unemployment program. Every state program is different. For those of you in the entertainment industry, one of the important points is to figure out which state you should apply in. Do not apply in Florida. The maximum benefits in Florida are $275 a week. The maximum benefits in California are about $450 a week. The programs are different from state to state and subject to certain minimum federal guarantees. So the only federal program of wage replacement which has existed has been the unemployment program and the retirement program known as the Social Security program. It wasn't until the early 1990s that Congress enacted the Family Medical Leave Act, which allowed workers to take time off but provided no wage replacement at all. It wasn't until San Francisco, through an initiative, adopted a local paid sick leave program of only 3 days and a little bit more for bigger employers, that any locality for the first time ever required employers to pay paid sick leave, time off with pay. That was changed in 2015 when California adopted a state paid sick leave program statewide, but it only provides 3 days of paid sick leave. Connecticut and a few other states have applied. So we've had a complete lapse of responsibility on the part of the government to enact or adopt any paid sick leave program. The only wage replacement program of any significance has been the unemployment program. So the federal government adopts, and this is the first slide, the first federal paid sick leave program, Families First Coronavirus Response Act, FFCRA. Next slide. And this is a very minimal emergency paid sick leave act. And the next slide shows what it is. The next slide says the federal government will tell every employer you must pay up to 80 hours of sick pay. That's 2 weeks if you're off work for any of these reasons. I'm not going to go through them in detail because of the time, but they're all COVID related. So you get paid sick leave required by the government, imposed upon employers up to 80 hours, unless you're an employer that has 500 or more employees. And you're excused from the program, in part because many of them are doing it, but in part also that gap has now been filled in LA City, San Francisco, and some other localities which have adopted their own local paid sick leave programs for employers above 500. But the paid sick leave program has 2 parts to it. One is if you're off work because you're sick, it's up to $511 a day. If you're off work because someone else is sick, and this is a very general statement, it's up to $200 a day, and there's some restrictions to this, but this is the first federal paid sick leave program around the country. It's up to 80 hours, 2 weeks. It is significant, but nowhere what we need If you compare that to the paid sick leave programs in Europe, where there are months and months of paid sick leave, you'll understand why it's woefully inadequate. Next slide. So the second part of what Congress did, in addition to requiring employers to pay this paid sick leave, was to give workers emergency time off. In the 1990s, Congress enacted the Family Medical Leave Act, and the states followed suit, giving workers time off to take care of their own illnesses as well as the illnesses of their family. Congress has now expanded that to say that if you've been employed for 30 days, an employer, if the employer has less than 500 and you have to take time off to care for children who are under the age of 18 because of school closure, next slide, then you can get pay for that time off, which is, again, an unusual program. I want to stop and just make sure you understand the effect of this. This is the first time the federal government has stepped in and required employers to take care of their employees when they're off work, other than the unemployment program, which was dumped into the state labs. But this is a sea change. This is going to be an incredible change in the way government functions and government works and protects workers in the future, because is this more than the camel's nose in the tent or the foot in the door. This is a huge change in the way government works. So let's skip the next few slides. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. There's lots to talk about, but not a lot of time to do it. So the slides that I've skipped, let me just address them with the slides that Caroline addressed, which are small business loans, small business amounts. There'll be a lot of small businesses, some of which you have worked for, will get an infusion of cash at some point in the future. We don't know exactly when, because the program hasn't kicked in, but a lot of this infusion of cash requires it be spent on wages and putting people to work. So you'll need to make sure that those employers that you've worked for that may have closed, that may get this money, use it for putting people to work, not for other purposes. So there's all this direct and indirect money to employers that is meant to subsidize workers. Now, let me just make another sort of political point about the way the system works. Not only has it relied upon the states to do something, the federal government hasn't done anything. The purpose behind the Social Security Act and the Unemployment Act in 1935 were to create a stimulus, to put money in the economy on the theory that if workers were paid unemployment benefits, they'd spend it and stimulate the economy. And that's why this bill, these two bills were so overwhelmingly approved by Congress, the FFCRA and the CARES Act, because it's really a way of getting money back to businesses. So they will have money to put people to work, people will then spend the money, and the money will circulate. And this is the stimulus part of this whole concept. It isn't because Congress is so concerned about workers. The Democrats forced the Congress to put this in because it's seen as a stimulus package. So when this money comes, you're supposed to spend it to stimulate the economy. Next slide. One part of the CARES Act was to put a lot of money into some industries that are failing or faltering. The airline industry is a big beneficiary of this, and the rest of these slides indicate where a lot of this money will go to assist industries that are faltering. Unfortunately, the entertainment industry is not one that has specific money aimed at it. It'll be the beneficiary indirectly of some of this money. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. So stop here. Just one point. Again, this is specific money. $1 billion for tribal health systems, $1.5 billion to triple beds in military facilities. Congress threw money all sorts of ways, not knowing exactly where it would land and how it would work. But the idea was to put money back in the economy. And one area that was targeted was healthcare. Going. So what I want to do is specifically take just a few minutes to address something specific about California law. Many of you in the entertainment industry have worked for employers, and there are laws that protect you to make sure that all your wages are paid. And you need to consider them because this is another form of wage replacement, of putting money in your pockets. So for example, California requires that if you're laid off, furloughed, or discharged, all wages due and owing to you must be paid, and that includes vacation and PTO money. Must be paid upon layoff, furlough, or discharge. And if you don't get paid everything, then you can go to the labor commissioner or maybe to a workers' rights center and bring a lawsuit or claim. And there's a penalty of up to 30 days pay for not paying all wages due upon termination. Now, before I go further, I know some of you may be concerned about going after an employer that didn't pay you everything. because of retaliation. I understand that problem, but nonetheless, you're owed the money, and that's money that's yours. That's wage replacement. It's money you earned, and there's a 30-day penalty if you don't get everything paid upon layoff or furlough. There's also the obligation in California to pay for rest breaks and meal periods. If you miss them, there's 1 hour's compensation due. You have to be paid for all time when you're working. You're under the control of the employer. And that doesn't mean you're working, but under the control of the employer. So if you're hanging around waiting for something to do, sometimes you have to be paid for that. That may be money you're owed that you may need in the future because of this crisis. You also have to be paid for all expenses you incurred. So if you had to travel or go someplace at the employer's request, this isn't commuting, but it's the employer's request, you have to be paid for it. You also have to be paid for all hours worked at the minimum wage. So a lot of workers who get told to show up, they don't get paid. They got to be paid for that time. The 2 final points is that when you look at this system, you've got the federal government, you've got the state government, and you have many local ordinances, and that's particularly true in the Los Angeles basin. So you have to figure out where you work and which local ordinance applies. So for example, LA City did something a week and a half ago, in which they said, if you're a corporation with more than 500 employees, you have to effectively comply with the sick pay I've just described that the federal government required. So all this becomes incredibly complicated. So what I do is I encourage all of you to do what the prior speakers have said. Get your information together, go to a resource, go to a center. If you're a union member, go to a union, SAG-AFTRA, Teamsters, all the entertainment unions in LA, IATSE have incredible resources to help you. And there may be union resources that are not available to non-union members that they can assist you with, particularly health and welfare, which may exist for many of you. So I encourage you to go to these other resources to figure out where your best bet is to make your application. Next slide. Just another final point is that, as again, you're all concerned about retaliation. All the federal and state and local statutes and ordinance have what we call anti-retaliation provisions. If the employer doesn't hire you or retaliates against you because of you're making a claim for wages or unemployment benefits or something like that, there are protections. I don't claim as a lawyer to claim they're always effective, but they're out there. So my final point is, this is a complicated system because of the politics of it and because of history. I understand that, and I think the speakers have made that clear, but there are tremendous resources in the LA basin. There are resources in Northern California, where I'm primarily located. You should go to those resources. Don't be afraid. It's the time of crisis. We all understand it. And for all these benefits, my final comment is apply, 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 and keep fighting for the benefits you're entitled to. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for sharing your wealth of knowledge on the rights of workers in California and the intersection with unemployment benefits and the resources that you've shared with folks who are joining us today for this webinar. We have time just for a couple of questions. We have one from Leslie Simmons for the county. Carolyn's still on. Would people who have a loan-out corporation with a studio be considered small business owners and qualify for the county assistance Carolyn discussed?
Hi, it would really depend on the number of employees. That's how we're typically looking at this. And then for the program that we rolled out, which again is already oversubscribed, our threshold was 50 employees, which I know is very small, or revenue of $2 million annually or less. We just rolled out a loan product through our community development, our LA County Development Authority today. And that's a little bit more flexible, but it uses community development block grant funding. And then of course, the way that we define a local small business enterprise at the county is the same as how the state defines it. You would have to have an average of 14 million annual revenue or less annually, and then 100 employees or less. So we are happy to answer specific questions. I'm happy to give my email address, and you can email me if you want to give me some more specifics about your business. We can put you in the right place. And Cindy can hopefully email that out.
Great, yes. And just so folks know, we will be making this webinar available if you had to tune in and out for portions of it, so folks can access it through the YouTube channel. We will be leaving it up. We have a couple other specific questions. As I said, we're limited on time, but we will be putting out written FAQs. We're gathering all the questions that you've been submitting through this webinar, and we'll be tailoring our future webinars to make sure that we're addressing the questions that are repeatedly coming up that a lot of people are struggling with. We have another question for Jill. I was offered a job, but before I was officially hired, COVID-19 shut down the studios. Am I eligible for the additional $600 a week relief? And how do I fill out the certification for benefits section on how that happened, to show that that happened?
Okay, there's a couple of different questions there. It kind of depends on whether or not you're already on unemployment insurance. If you've been getting unemployment insurance already and you were just waiting to start this new job, then that $600 is going to kick in immediately. In fact, we heard from the governor that that money was going to be distributed this week. So if you already have UI, that's going to happen automatically and you don't need to do anything further. If you haven't applied for UI yet, having a job planned that was then canceled because of COVID, that is one of the expanded eligibility for UI. So what I would encourage you to do is just immediately, go ahead and file for unemployment insurance. And then once you've gotten those benefits, you'll get that $600. Your second question seemed to be more specific to how do I certify for that? I'm not sure yet because we haven't seen what the EDD has done to revise their application form for these new situations. So I don't know how to answer that question, but I will look into it and try to do that online for you.
Thank you, Jill. And a question for David. If I can't work because I'm sick or caring for a child or other family member, should I apply for paid family leave, SDI, or expanded unemployment insurance, PUA? Which one will get a higher benefit?
That may depend upon your prior earnings. So the answer, you can't tell without looking at your system, but you can go online and look at each one of them and see. But keep in mind that SDI depends upon your own disability, so that may be precluded. So what's left is either unemployment insurance and or paid family leave. The unemployment insurance will be more now because of the $600 from the PUA.
Okay, thank you, David. And then a final question that we can take for the city. For the city of Los Angeles, if I need assistance with unemployment benefits application, are the WorkSource Centers and staff there available to assist me with an unemployment benefits application?
Yes, please call your local center that is more convenient for you, either by your work or by your previous work or where you live. All centers are taking appointments.
Okay. Well, that's all the time that we have today. We ran a little over so we could get to some of the questions that we had. We see there are dozens and dozens of questions that you all have posed to us, very good questions, and we want to make sure that you know that they will be answered. We will be having future webinars that are going to address your questions that we see about AB5, about sole proprietorships, about loan outs. We will have very specifically tailored webinars in the future to address those questions, and as soon as we get the application available through EDD, we will be able to answer some of the more targeted questions about how to respond to questions that are being, and information that's sought in the EDD application. Any final words from any of our panelists before we sign off?
Yeah, remind you, apply, keep fighting for your benefits. You'll get them. Go to a resource, your union or any of these other resources, keep after it.
Well, with that, again, I'd like to thank all of our experts and panelists who took the time out of the way from their families and who are in the fight every day to make sure that we are providing resources to the community that is being affected by the pandemic and coronavirus. I just want to also give one last shout out to Legendary Entertainment, who has made this possible, who is helping us to make sure we remain up to date And we will be continuing to be a resource for you throughout this pandemic, providing the necessary information, most up-to-date information that you need, and future webinars. So please make sure you sign up if you haven't already. The web address here where you can make sure you get future email alerts about the upcoming webinars is www.publiccouncil.org/help, and that stands for the name of this webinar series, which is Helping Entertainment, Labor, and Professionals. Thank you all for joining us. I wish you all and your families safety and health during this very difficult time. And please know that Public Council and the folks that are here, the city, the county, labor and employment experts are here for you. Reach out to them. We are willing to answer questions, and wish you all the best. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.